Hey, just finishing this claim to get Dave back on the road.
Nice. I wonder what Dave's doing.
You do your thing. We've got you covered.
Hey, is the power off on this?
I don't know. Just take it off.
Safety violation, unsafe work conditions.
In the construction trades unions, safety is our highest priority, and we train you to recognize and speak out on unsafe working conditions so that everyone arrives and goes home safely. Learn about careers in construction at georgiaconstructioncareers.com.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the 304th episode of the Alfa Insurance Georgia Prep Sports Drive for the GHSA State Title. Today we're going to be joined by Pierce County head coach Ryan Herring. They are in the Class 2A semifinals. They have a big matchup with Fitzgerald. I talked to him last night. I think he's in a chiropractor appointment right now, so as soon as he gets out of that, we're going to bring him on the show. I've been impressed with Pierce County. They obviously won a state title recently in Class 3A. They went down to 2A last year, and that's been a very intriguing classification with Thompson winning it last year, getting knocked out last round. Now you got some intriguing matchups, especially with Cook on the other side. Pierce County's latest win really stood out to me. They had a blowout victory over Fellowship Christian. That was a team that I thought was a really tough matchup. They have exceptional talent in their run game with CJ Givers. He'll be back next year. They also have Josh Petty, one of the better offensive linemen, and then Josh Milholm. He was a two-way player that was outstanding in the secondary as an all-region return man and one of the better receivers in that classification. So a huge win for them. Also today I'll be posting a story on the rivalry and historic implications of our matchup between Marist and Thomas County Central. They have a lot of history. This will be the 9th all-time meeting, and every single time both teams have been ranked. In those 9 meetings, 5 of them, including this week, will be semifinal matchups. The other ones occurred in the regular season. One was the Corky Kell in 1997. The other was the Corky Kell in 1996. And so the first 6 times they played, all of those games were in the Georgia Dome. The first time they played outside of the Dome was 2012. They matched up early in the season. Thomas County Central won that one 21-17, and then they played in 2013. Thomas County Central won that one 28-21. So at neutral sites, Thomas County Central was 5-1 in the Dome, and then Thomas County Central on the road has been 1-0, and then at home 1-0. And so this one will be at Marist, and currently Thomas County Central is ranked number 2 and Marist is ranked number 7. So in total, Thomas County Central, as good as this matchup has been historically, as close as the games have been, Thomas County Central owns a 7-1 all-time series record. So that is certainly going to be interesting. So when I talk to Coach Chadwick later today, I'm sure if I ask him the question, what's your favorite memory in this series, it's going to be the one that Marist won. That was the 2003 victory in the semifinals. But I also want to ask him, just in his eyes, objectively, which game does he feel like was the best football game? Because these matchups, we talked about them playing in the Corky Kell 1996. That was the first time they ever matched up. Thomas County Central had a 32-31 victory, 1-point victory the first time they ever played. And then, funny enough, They matched up again in the semifinals that season in '96, and Thomas County Central had another 1-point victory. So that is pretty incredible. And actually, that same season in 1996, talking about how epic the Corky Kell has been since its inception, Valdosta beat Brookwood that year in the Corky Kell, and then Brookwood avenged that later to win their first ever state title that same season. So goes to show that was before the Corky was 11 games or 4 days of action. It was just the prime Georgia Dome matchups, and so they matched up twice last year in 1996, and then in 1997, same thing again. They open up in the Georgia Dome in the Corky Kell. Thomas County Central won 34-16. They were ranked number 1. Marist was ranked number 5, and then they met again in the semifinals, and Thomas County Central got that win again, 34-28. They were still ranked number 1, and Marist had climbed to number 3. So then that was 96 and 97. They matched up twice both those years, and then they did not meet again until 2002. That was when they clashed in the semifinals once again at the Dome, and that one went to overtime, and then Thomas County Central won that one 35-34. They played again the next season in 2003 in the semifinals, and Marist finally got the victory over them. They were ranked number 6. Thomas County Central was number 3 going into that matchup, and Marist won 35-21 to advance. Then the most recent meetings, you have 2012. That was the first one, as I mentioned, that was played outside of the Georgia Dome. That one was at Marist. That was one of the few times that Marist was more highly ranked than Thomas County Central, even though they've all been top 10 matchups. That was number 8, Thomas County Central, number 2, Marist. Thomas County Central got the road upset 21-17. They played again in 2013, and that was Thomas County Central number 7, Marist number 4, and a 28-21 victory by Thomas County Central. So that's just a little bit about the history with that. We'll go deeper into it. I'll talk to Coach Chadwick, get some of the big names, talk to some other coaches. I know I saw John Ford, Effingham County's coach. He remembers going to these games back in the day. A lot of people that got to watch them in the Corky Kell, then again in the semifinals. And that was back when the semifinals were a really big deal, because those were hosted at the Georgia Dome, and then the championships went to a home site. So the semifinals, I mean, making it to the Dome, you see shirts now where it's like road to the Dome or road to the Bins. You wanted to get to the Georgia Dome to play in the semifinals. And actually in 2003, that same year, I was there. That was the first time Walton ever made it to the semifinals. I was a junior. We had an unbelievable season, and then we lost to Parkview in the semis, and that was when Caleb King was the running back and ended up going to Georgia and having a good career there. So that was when those semifinal games in the Dome were a huge deal back then. A lot on the line and the opportunity to go home. So few series have basically had just such huge stakes on the line every single time they meet. And so it's kind of like in like an NBA season when the Lakers and Celtics are both good. It just feels different because you have two historic programs that are just have championship trophies all on their shelves. It just feels like Georgia high school football is right when you see Thomas County Central and Marist squaring off in the semi. So I'm really excited for this matchup. We've been tracking the weather. It looks like there is a potential for some rain in the forecast, which obviously can change a lot. Now, maybe not so with this matchup because the teams do like to run the ball, but we had one game where it rained this year, and that 100% impacted it. That was the Harrison-North Paulding game. We had fumbled snaps the entire game, And then because of that, Harrison struggled on their, I think, was it Harrison or North Paulding? One of the teams struggled on all their kickoff units because they just kept fumbling it. And then there were so many fumbles in that game, that was when they tried to trick the referees by basically stealing the ball from the center when North Paulding was trying to kneel out the game. So I think that's going to impact a lot in the semifinals statewide. If it's raining, man, that is, I think you're going to see some upsets. So one of the games I want to talk about, though, that I've kind of come around and changed my mind on since yesterday is the Grayson and Milton matchup. I picked Grayson because Najee definitely sold me on them early in the season. I picked them to beat Buford. I was not sold on Buford. I thought they looked a little one-dimensional on offense. They relied on KJ Bolden way too much to get points on the board this season. They didn't really have a steady offense that would drive down the field and have the ability to just impose their will, have big play drives. They relied too much on explosive plays and then KJ just doing what he does. So I thought Grayson would win that matchup, but when you look at how they won, it was not the prettiest victory. And that's credit to Buford's defense, which was a strength of the team. But offensively, I'm concerned with Grayson's attack if Dylan Elder is banged up. When we did the Archer game, he obviously went off, had an incredible game, was breaking all those runs down the sideline, probably one of his better games of the season. He absolutely balled out. But it was late in that game, I saw him take a really big hit, like right in front of me, and he fell on his wrist, and I could tell that wrist was banged up. He immediately put ice on it, and then it was a good sign to see him return the next week as they clinched the region, I believe, against Parkview. And so I think he might be a little banged up, and that's going to be a huge problem. If they have to be one-dimensional against Milton with their front that can get after the passer, and then their great secondary, their versatile linebackers, if they don't have Dylan Elder healthy or someone back there to run the ball 20 times, that's going to be a tough matchup. Milton's defense is every bit as good at those key positions as any team they face this season. And so they had a lot of trouble in that Buford game. So let's just look at the stats real quick. And I think the reason the passing game was only at 34.6% completion was because they didn't have that balance. They had to be one-dimensional. They had to rely on the passing game. They only had the one offensive touchdown. Both teams only had one offensive touchdown. But Jeff Davis, 9 of 26, 176 yards, so they still produced the big play. That's something Grayson can definitely continue to do. Had a 64-yarder, but just 34.6% completion. That's not gonna get it done. I thought Milton against Colquitt, they ran into a similar problem. Colquitt took away the run. They had to rely on the pass, and then they had to get even more creative. And I believe Najee just pointed it out. Luke Nickel was their leading rusher in that game, and that had to have been a career high. He went off for like 119 yards rushing. No one else really took a lot of carries. So I think that's going to be a concern for both teams if they can't balance out their offense, but I think it would hurt Grayson even more because they have the ability to have the big play. That's the strength of their offense, but in terms of keeping the ball out of Milton's hands, sustaining drives, they need that threat in the backfield. So hopefully Dylan's okay to go. You also have Amari Alston, a junior that can step up. Elijah Miller took some carries, but in the last game against Buford, Elder just had 4 carries for 5 yards. So it's a good sign that he was out there. Maybe it was just like a weekly setback, but that's obviously going to be key. And if it's raining and you really would want to run the ball and not put it in the air, that's a big concern. And Milton, I think both teams are really good at producing turnovers. But with Grayson, they're good at ball hawking. They're good at stripping plays in the backfield. But Milton, the turnovers they were able to produce, that's coming from their linebacker core. They're picking passes over the middle of the field. They're putting their hat on the football. I think Milton's good at producing big plays defensively, getting those turnovers. I think the red zone's going to be key in this game. I know Grayson didn't have the best game special teams wise against Buford, but I'm just starting to lean a little more towards Milton in this matchup. And looking at the film, I was not impressed with the Buford offense in that game. I know Grayson has a great defense. I think Tyler Atkinson is hands down the best sophomore defender in the state. But my goodness, if he's getting like 19 tackles, 3 sacks, and you look at the game film, he's just getting there first. I mean, that Buford offense was getting lit up because they were forced to be one-dimensional, just didn't have the playmakers outside, and they couldn't match them physically. So I just think Milton's a tougher team up front than Buford. If they can find a running attack, I think they can control the football. I think they might win a close one. And so I thought we would see a rematch with Walton and Grayson, but I've changed my mind. So we'll see. I think it's going to be close. I think it's just going to depend on the health of Dylan Elder, where Milton, their lack of the run game hasn't been a result of injuries. It just hasn't really been the key to their offense this year. They've gone more to a pass-first ability in recent seasons. So it should be interesting, but I'm sure we'll get some thoughts on that. Maybe I'll do a poll, and I will not change my mind again. I'm sticking with it. All right, so let's look at some of these other classifications, starting with Class 2A and the Fitzgerald and Pierce County game. The last time they met was 2021. That was the year Pierce County, I believe, won their state title. Fitzgerald is 10-3. They're the number 2 seed. They lost to Cook in the region. And then you have Pierce County at 12-1. They're the top seed from Region 2. And I have their schedule up right here, and they have been really impressive this season. Let's look at this resume real quick. All right, so in non-region play, these are some of the key wins that stand out. They played Meta early. That's a solid team in Division I. 47-10 victory. They played Charlton County. That's a solid team in Division I. They won 48-6 in that one. Their only loss was to Appling County in region play. That was a game where they went into that one number 3. Appling County was ranked number 2. Then they beat Toombs County, another test in their region. They were number 5. Toombs County was number 3. They won that one 17-14. So they've won a close game and lost a close game in region play. And since then, they've been utterly dominant. 44-0, 35-7 over Vidalia, 31-0 Tatnall. And then in the playoffs, 42-7 Ace Charter, 35-14 Laney, and then the big 49-17 win over Fellowship Christian. As for Appling County, the team that beat them this season, I think this is interesting. Their only losses this year, look at this resume. They lost their season opener, this is a 2A school, 20-17 to Ware County. They won 4 straight after that. They dropped one to Toombs County after beating Pierce. That was probably a game where they're coming off the emotion of opening up with a big region victory, then lost a close one. So kind of the flip of Pierce County with the 3-point victory, 3-point loss. And then they fell to Cook in the second round. This is Appling County. So Cook's the team that beat Fitzgerald this year. You could argue those are 2 of the top contenders, and so you have that common opponent. So the team that beat Pierce County lost to Cook, and then Cook beat Fitzgerald this year. So I think that just shows so really evenly matched up Class 2A Final Four. All those teams are battle tested, and they've faced the top contenders out of their region. Fitzgerald is the only number 2 seed remaining in the Class 2A field, but is one victory away from its 4th consecutive trip to the championship game. They lost crushing heartbreaker to Thompson last year. The Purple Hurricane defeated 5th-ranked Callaway, another rock-solid team, 17-14 last week after trailing 14-10 at halftime. Bill Boone scored the game-winning touchdown on a 3-yard run with 24 seconds remaining in the third quarter. A 52-yard pass from Wilson to Quincy DeBerry set up the score. Calvin Tillman intercepted a pass in the end zone with less than 2 minutes left, and the Purple Hurricanes ran out the clock. Fitzgerald was outgained 339 to 299, but forced 3 turnovers. Pierce County, on the other hand, reached the semis for the 4th time in 6 seasons with a 49-17 win over number 8 ranked Fellowship Christian. The Bears have won their 3 playoff games by an average of 29.3 points per game. Caden McGatha rushed for 280 yards and 5 touchdowns on 36 carries. Beast mode right there. You love to see that in the playoffs where you're getting that season high number of carries just leading the way. He was also 3 of 6 passing for 73 yards and a touchdown. For the season, McGatha has 1,631 yards and 20 touchdowns rushing, and then 1,800 yards and 23 touchdowns passing. Pierce County won the most recent meeting with Fitzgerald in 2021, but trails the series 7-1, just like Marist and Thomas County Central. And so the Maxwell projection in this game actually has Pierce County, the region champ, and home team favored 22-17. Should be a very close game. But obviously the key right there, Caden McGatha, their quarterback and leading rusher. He's in uncharted territory. There are not many guys this season that, rushing for 1,600 and passing for 1,800. He is doing it all for that offense. All right, let's look at the Cook-Rockmart game real quick before we go to a break. I think that one will be intriguing. Rockmart looked really good last round. Cook has been the number 1 ranked team in 2A all season. This will be the first ever meeting between the teams. They both have won 10 consecutive games since starting their seasons 1 and 2. Cook's losses were to Valdosta and Clinch County, and Rockmart lost to Cedartown and Dalton. So I mentioned that early in the season, Pierce County beat Clinch. Clinch is the team that lost to Cook. All right, so then Cook beat Columbia 23-20 last week to reach the semis for the first time since 2007. Cook led 20-0 in the first half, but didn't secure the victory until an interception by Rashald Tippins in the final minute after Columbia drove inside Cook's 25-yard line. Tippins also returned a fumble 38 yards for a second quarter touchdown. Big shout out and great game by Rashald Tippins defensively. All right, Keyshawn McKever ran for 145 yards, giving him 1,323 for the season. This is all for Cook, by the way. All right, Drew Folsom has passed for 2,321 yards, and Nyshawn Wallace has a team-high 780 receiving yards. All right, Rockmart is in the semifinals for the first time since its 2018 team reached the championship game. The Yellow Jackets beat number 4 ranked Toombs County. That was the team that beat defending state champion Thompson in the second round. So Rockmart beat them handedly 45-21 last week. It was their 3rd straight playoff victory by at least 24 points, one of the hottest teams in the 2A bracket. All right, Callion Thompson, quarterback for Rockmart, he was 11 of 15 passing for 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's thrown for 1,872 yards and 22 touchdowns this season with only 2 interceptions. Brent Washington rushed for 101 yards, and Najee Turner had 5 receptions for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. These schools are located about 250 miles apart and have never faced each other. That game's going to be at Rockmart in northwest Georgia. Should be a great one, and Maxwell is also predicting the home team to win this one, Rockmart 22-17. So those are the two-way matchups. I think they're going to be really interesting. All these teams have played higher classifications, whether it's the Valdostas, and then they've also played a lot of common opponents. They've all had at least one loss this season, and certainly have you have, in the case of Pierce County and Rockmart, 2 teams that are really hot at the right time. So let's go ahead. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back on the other side.
What you doing?
Hey, just finishing this claim to get Dave back on the road.
Nice. I wonder what Dave's doing.
You do your thing. We've got you covered.
Hey, does it matter if this leaks?
It don't matter to me. Can't see it from my house.
Illegal use of hands and proper training.
GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com has 14 different highly skilled trades with tuition free training in our certified apprenticeship programs to train you the right way. Find your career at GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com.
All right, welcome back. So let's look at Class 3A. And so a common theme of the playoffs so far is the teams that are looking to avenge last year's losses have been extremely successful in doing that. You had, obviously, Walton beating Carrollton last week. You had, in the second round, you had Warner Robins beating Ware County. Then you had Creekside beating Warner Robins. And so they've been really successful, and there's a big opportunity for that to happen in 3A with Calvary Day at Cedar Grove. Cedar Grove won that one last year. We televised that game. It was a 30-0 victory, one of the most impressive just showings by Cedar Grove in that game. The defense was so solid, and then E.J. Colson, just a young quarterback at the time, really took that next step, and it was impressive. Calvary Day this season, though, they are 1 year more mature. They're the favorite, I believe, going into this one. They've been 13-0. They've been crushing opponents, and they look very dangerous. The numbers that Jake Merklinger is putting up this season are insane. He's routinely having games where he's 90% accurate, 80% at the low end. He's just been on an absolute mission this season, and they want to get that revenge. But it's going to be a tough task because we're talking about Cedar Grove here. So let's look at this matchup real quick. All right, so they both are number 1 seeds. They both dominated their respective regions. Their only other meeting we mentioned was last year in the quarterfinals, the 30-0 victory. All right, Calvary Day is 24-1 since joining Class 3A last season. Their only loss was to Cedar Grove, which held the Cavs to 129 total yards in that quarterfinal shutout. Replicating that defensive performance seems unlikely, as Calvary is averaging a whopping 49.3 points per game this season. In Calvary Day's 42-21 win over Wesleyan in the quarterfinals, so really good Wesleyan team that beat Stevens County the round prior to that, and it was a tight game before they turned it on the second half. But in that 42-21 victory, Merklinger, the Tennessee commit, passed for 241 yards and 2 touchdowns, and also rushed for 80 yards and 3 touchdowns. Calvary nearly had 3 100-yard receivers. They had Edward Coleman with 134 yards, Caden Arnold, who's been balling out, he had 108 yards, and then Michael Smith came in with 99. Smith is a tight end committed to South Carolina. And that is definitely a specialty of Calvary Day. They have routinely had incredible tight ends that are a huge part of that offense. All right, Cedar Grove has lost 5 games, all to much larger schools, including Mill Creek, Colquitt from 7A. According to the computer Maxwell rankings, Cedar Grove's average opponent this season is 4 touchdowns better than Calvary's average opponent. A really interesting stat right there. In the Saints' 28-14 win over Mary Parsons in the quarterfinals, Bowden Walker committed to Georgia, rushed for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a 5-touchdown performance in the second round. He has been very effective. And then E.J. Colson, a UCF commit, was 9 of 20 passing for 119 yards and a touchdown and rushed for 67 yards. Devin Carter had 4 receptions for 80 yards and threw a 7-yard touchdown pass. Colson has thrown for 2,220 yards this season and has rushed for 677. Bo Walker has rushed for 1,327 yards. So both teams have mobile quarterbacks, experienced guys, lots of starters under their belt. Merklinger is a 4-year starter, so he's had a slightly longer career, but it's very interesting how much more challenging Cedar Grove's schedule has been. But despite all that, the Maxwell computer ratings taking all that into account still has Calvary Day as a 33-24 projected winner. So we'll see if that trend continues. Can last year's losers come out triumphant this year and avenge their losses? We'll see if that happens, but should be a great matchup, and I think it's going to be crucial that that game is at Cedar Grove, and they don't have to go back to that hostile territory in Savannah. All right, the other matchup is going to be Savannah Christian at Carver Columbus. Gotta be honest, I'm not sure what this matchup's going to entail. Carver has won a lot of close games this year. They impressed me when they went up to Brookwood early this season, a game where they're probably going in there, okay, this is an opportunity, let's just do what we do. It's a 7A school, but they were up on Brookwood. I mean, they had that game, and then it took a miracle for Brookwood to pull it out. Onside kick, late touchdowns, and they end up losing that one at the last second. But other than that, they've looked outstanding against the Class 2A programs. They were in the 4A finals just 2 years ago before they lost a heartbreaker to Benedictine. And then their coach, Coach Coffey, has been phenomenal. He holds them accountable. He believes in toughness. He comes from a background, I think both of his parents are educators, and he has meant a lot to that program. All right, so let's look at this. Savannah Christian is 11-2. They're the number 2 seed coming out of that Region 3 with Calvary Day. And then Carver Columbus is 10-3, the number 1 seed in Region 1. And they're ranked number 9. Savannah Christian is ranked number 4 in the AJC poll. This will be the first ever meeting between Savannah Christian and Carver Columbus. So yeah, you have 2 private schools still in these Class 3A. All right, so both schools won their only state titles more than 10 years ago this century and have been contenders most years since. Savannah Christian, the 2011 Class A champion, is 22-4 in its 2 seasons of Class 3A action after playing in Class A for the previous 14 seasons. Carver, so that's interesting. You have Savannah Christian moving up to 3A. Carver Columbus went down to 3A. All right, so Carver, the 2007 state champs, is playing its second semifinal in 3 seasons and was the 4A runner-up to another Savannah school, Benedictine, in 2021. Last year, it was Coach Coffey's first year at Carver, and they lost a really tough game to Oconee County, which had Whit Weeks, a great defense, and they won on the last second. I think that close loss, when I talked to him, he said it was a game they felt they could have won, and they've been trying to pull out these close victories this year, with the one exception, the Brookwood game, but that was just one of those games. It's like you are up 2 touchdowns late, and everything just goes right. They get the onside, the Hail Mary. I don't really fault them for that one. It was a non-region game anyway. All right, so mentioned they lost to Benedictine in that 4A finals. Savannah Christian previously beat unbeaten Lumpkin County 42-21 in the quarterfinals. Jaden Miles was in on 21 tackles and scored on a 32-yard run. Insane. That was against Lumpkin County. Zoe Smalls rushed for 200 yards, and Kenry Wall rushed for 168. Walls also had a 38-yard reception. Both have more than 1,500 yards from scrimmage this season, and Wall has 384 return yards. Savannah Christian's losses are to Marist and Calvary Day, teams that are still alive in the playoffs. Carver beat Monroe area 18-14 in the quarterfinals. Carver scored its first touchdown when Tristan Givens forced a fumble that Tyquise Brown returned 32 yards. Carver led 18-7 at the half, and Monroe area didn't seriously threaten to score after getting to 18-14 in the third quarter. Jacoby Hunter was 14 of 22 passing for 215 yards and a touchdown to Braylon Jakes. That is great numbers right there from Jacoby Hunter. And then Deontay Childs rushed for 102 yards. He's been exceptional this season, rushing for 1,634 yards. Carver has won 8 straight games since consecutive non-region losses to Northeast, Brookwood, and Hateville Charter. Despite all that, it's going to be at Carver Columbus, and out of the games we previewed, this is the first time they're giving it to the road team. Savannah Christian is a 27-15 favorite, projected winner by Maxwell. So interesting matchups right there, and if the computer is correct, we would get a rematch between Calvary Day and Savannah Christian in the finals. That would certainly be interesting. But let's go ahead. We'll take one more quick break. I'm going to try to connect with Coach Herring on the other side.
Dang, where you get this car?
You need to join the union.
The union?
Absolutely. You can get 10 of these.
Union construction workers earn the highest wages with the best benefits and the most protection in the construction industry. Find your career in construction. Go to GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com and start your future today.
What you doing?
Hey, just finishing this claim to get Dave back on the road.
Nice. I wonder what Dave's doing.
You do your thing. We've got you covered.
All right, Coach Herring, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We have been talking about the Class 2A semifinal matchups. Looks like it's going to be great on both sides of the bracket. But what stood out to me is just you guys have really looked sharp in these playoffs, some big wins. So what's been the difference so far this postseason?
Well, just great kids, to be honest with you. We got great kids. We had to play a lot of kids both ways, and that are undersized, but they got a lot of heart, a lot of character, work hard every day, pay attention to detail. They give us everything they got, and it's, you'd like to think you do a good job coaching, but I mean, these kids do a really good job playing. on his back.
Yeah, and I want to talk about your latest win. You played Fellowship Christian. That is an outstanding team. They got a great running back, great two-way players with Josh Milholm, and then great size up front. What did you see just work for you guys in that game, and how you guys were able to come out with such a strong victory?
Well, they caught us off guard last year. They did a lot of slanting and knifing and ripping and kind of caught us off guard. And, beat us pretty good last year. And so this year we were just, prepared for what they were going to do and kind of had an idea what they were going to do. And our kids just did a great job of executing. Our quarterback made some good checks. We didn't throw it much in that game because a lot of the run game was working so well. But defensively, our kids, they just executed. We had, skies and stuff, coverages, trying to bait them and stuff. Kids really just boiled down to execution. They had a long drive down here. Last year we had a long drive up there. So they had a long drive down here. And we had a lot of kids back to play last year when we got beat by the quarterfinals. So, that was a big game for us, big game for our kids.
Yeah, and I want to ask about your junior quarterback, Caden McGatha. I mean, he's been phenomenal this season. Looks like he gives you great results in the run and then has the ability to pass. He hasn't been turning it over. So what's he brought to the table his junior year?
Well, he's a tough kid. He's not the fastest kid in the world. He doesn't have, he can't throw a ball 80 yards, but he can throw the ball where he needs to. He can run it where he needs to. He's got good vision. I think the biggest thing is his durability. He's been tough all year. I mean, this is a guy who, could possibly, end up with 2,000 rushing, 2,000 passing. I mean, that's almost unbelievable to think about. And, so he just had a great year, but I think he'd be the first one to tell you he's got an offensive line in front of him that's undersized, but they've been phenomenal. We've done a better job on the offensive line this year than we have in 5 years. So, really I can't talk about him without talking about the offensive line.
Yeah, you talked about the durability. He took 36 carries the last game. That's definitely impressive to me when you have a guy just impacting the game that much. So, did you realize at the time that he was north of 30 carries, or
no?
He looked fresh.
All I'm trying to do is get first downs. Just to be honest with you, I have no idea about carries, attempts, passing. I don't keep up with that and don't really pay attention to it. I'm just really trying to get first downs, get the ball in the end zone, and whatever's working, we're going stick with. And a lot of things were working with him running the ball, So I never pay attention to it. Then after the game, I'm like, well, that's awesome.
No, he had an outstanding performance. And then, Class 2A's really intrigued me. You had, I think last year when it came together, just seeing teams like Fellowship Christian join it, then a lot of schools that were in 3A coming down to it. And then what have you seen just this year, just in your region, all the top 10 opponents you guys faced?
Well, the region was tough. Appleton, is pretty as anybody in most classes. So that was a tough game. Toombs had a great team this year. That was a tough game. Vidalia had a tough team. So we have 4 teams in the region that all, we're well coached, had good players. I think that kind of helped us, form us, shape us, and get us ready for a playoff run.
Oh yeah, and it's really intriguing. You got Fitzgerald and Cook, and then Pierce County, you guys, and then Rockmart. I think those are all teams that are just peaking. They're hot at the right time. But what about Fitzgerald stands out to you? Just all the 4-quarter battles they've been, just how they kind of have that culture of winning.
Well, I'm telling you now, their head coach, it starts with him. He's built that culture, a culture of toughness. They don't beat themselves. They get in a lot of single wing type formations and others, but they get in every variation of a single wing you can imagine. And he's gonna run power. you know, just he's got 300-pound linemen, he's got big snippers, H-backs, and they turn every game into a bloodbath. Even when they lose the game, I mean, if you beat them, first off, you're very fortunate, but you also beat them, you've been in a battle. And Coach Pruitt, I mean, he's been in the finals 3 years in a row. He's been in the finals this year. You know, if you just look at his body of work there, you know, it's unbelievable. Those kids, they play hard, they play tough. You know, it's going to be a physical game every time you play them. Here we won in AAA, we won it. You know, they beat us in regular season. You know, so I mean, you know, we know all about them. They know all about us. You know, it's probably just going to be a real physically brutal game.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about your offense, but just last question: what about your defense has just given you confidence this year and stood out and impressed you?
Well, when you play good defense, you've got a little more. Your playbook, you know, can have a little more range. I think that's why, you know, we've thrown a lot more this year than we have in the last couple of years, because you're not as worried about, you know, extending the game. You know, you're not as much worried about, you know, giving them the ball back. You don't mind taking shots on third down where maybe in previous years you would have had to. But our defense has played exceptionally well. I mean, there's been so much improvement from the year before. I mean, last year we didn't play good defense, and you know, we've got most of those guys in secondary back, got the outside linebackers back. You know, we got offensive line is also our defensive line, so those guys have done a great job. But you know, we've played a lot better defense. The kids, a lot of them are a year older, but they understand a little more. But that's really, you know, that gave us a lot of chances. You know, to be better on offense, get the ball back quicker. You know, we create 3 outs. You know, that's just big in the game. That's big for game control, momentum. So, and our defense allows us to get off the field on third down.
Yeah, and then I guess this will be the second, or I guess you guys have been home the entire playoffs so far. I mean, how huge has that been, just with Thanksgiving break, and just to be able to kind of protect your home field and keep that routine?
I'm telling you, I love the way they do it in Georgia with, you know, with 1 seeds getting the host, and then you get a coin flip. It's worked out in our favor. You know, the coin flip, the fellowship. You know, it's worked out big. That's huge.
Yeah.
You know, that is huge, being able to play at home, not having to go to fellowship 5-hour drive, get through Atlanta, all that, then being able to see me, being home again. You know, Fishkill's not that far away, but it's still a good hour and a half. Being able to be at home, that's, you know, I think it's huge. I think it's, you know, that a lot of times, you know, you look at teams, they have to go all the way to Thompson, then they have to go all the way to Rockmart. You know, it's just hard to go on the road week after week, especially in the playoffs, playing good people. So being at home, it's an advantage. There's no doubt about it.
For sure. Well, Coach Herron, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. Best of luck against Fitzgerald, and hopefully we'll see you in Atlanta.
Okay, I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
You bet. All right. So there goes Coach Herron. I appreciate that. He was busy trying to get an adjustment at the chiropractor, so I'm glad he was still able to find the time. But yeah, that's huge for Pierce, being able to host throughout this postseason, because you look at 2A, similar to other classes, it's spread out. You got Cook having to travel over 250 miles to play Rockmart, so Rockmart's going to enjoy that home field advantage again. They would have had to make a long trip down to Toombs County if they didn't have it, which, as he mentioned, that's South Georgia all the way up to Tennessee, basically. So that is a huge advantage. But 2A is going to be very intriguing. And, gosh, Fitzgerald, they're such a tough team. We talked to them last year. The coach, he wasn't impressed how they looked early on, but he knew they were going to play their better football late. He said they were a little young. They're obviously more experienced this year. And beating Callaway on the road last round, 17-14, you can't do that if you aren't a tough football team. And as he mentioned, extremely well coached. And just they have that culture of winning. So 2A will be very exciting. And then one other thing that's a little unrelated but more related to the state finals, we're going to be honoring, it will be the 50th anniversary of the 1973 Southwest Atlanta football team. Southwest Atlanta, the school closed, I believe, in the 80s, but they had an incredible run. And that's actually the last Atlanta public school to win a state title. Mays came really close a couple years back. I think it was 2016 or 15 in the Georgia Dome. I forgot who they lost to, but it was a phenomenal game. They've had some teams knocking on the door, whether it was Carver, Atlanta, making it to the finals a couple years ago. You had South Atlanta coming really close, but still since 1973. So they're going to be honored, I believe, in between the Class 5A and Class 7A game. The amount of Georgia High School Football Hall of Famers that were on that team is tremendous, including Anthony Flanagan. He could have played either direction, basketball or football, but he went to UGA and played both. I think he's one of the last players to do that. And he was the first African American to start at quarterback at the University of Georgia. Sadly, he passed away in the early 2000s, but his family was there in attendance for his Hall of Fame, and then so were a lot of Southwest Atlanta alum. They have a really proud community because not only of the success they had in athletics, but they had a really strong emphasis on their academics. When I was talking to Anthony Terry yesterday, he said they had about, I think, 7 guys go Power 5, or what you consider Power 5, sent another 6 to HBCUs in the area, and then he had a couple Ivy Leagues too. Said the majority of the team was above a 3.6 GPA. They've gone on to become judges, state representatives, and then obviously a lot of them did their thing at the college and pro level. So we're going to have a lot of those alum at the game. That's going to be really exciting. But when he was explaining that 1973 season to me, it just seemed like such a special time. And what he said was, in the city of Atlanta at the time, that was during integration, there were so many high schools in Atlanta, and when you had that happen, kids were going from this school to this school, this school to this school, like within a short period. But Southwest was able to maintain most of their students from 8th grade on, and so he was saying their team pretty much ran things since the 8th grade. They only lost one game, and that was to West Rome during the 1972 season. Lost one game as a football team from 8th grade until senior year. And he said all the seniors from that 1972 team told the younger guys, he said, don't worry, you guys are going to get us that championship next year. And so they had the high expectations placed on them, but their team also had 4 of its starters on the basketball team were football players and star football players, and so they had won the state title in basketball to cap the 73 spring. So the basketball team experienced what it was like to win state. The football team wanted to do it in 73. They had one close game, potential scare in the regular season. That was against Northside Atlanta. It was a 2-point victory. They said that was the game that really woke them up. And what was also interesting, because they hosted West Rome the year before, which West Rome was considered one of the best teams in that decade, if not ever that year. But they got to host that playoff game. They got beat. And so the 1973 season was the first games that Southwest Atlanta ever played outside the city of Atlanta. They had never traveled outside of that. They've never gone to other historic programs in the state to play a football game. So that was something that the alumni still remembers just what it was like to go to these big-time programs in the playoff atmosphere. They ended up having to travel to Americus for the state championship. Americus had Mackle Harris at linebacker. So they had multiple Georgia High School Football Hall of Famers on that team. That's where Dan Reeves went. He got in this year. But he was explaining that game, and they ended up winning 21-7 to get the state title, become the last Atlanta public school to win it. But it was so interesting. I asked him what was the key moment about the game. What did it take? And he had an exact answer. He said Americus started the game. They were running the ball right at him. He said we couldn't stop them. They were kicking our butts. And they ended up getting an interception in the end zone that was returned basically 100 yards, but they ruled them down at the 1-yard line. So Southwest Atlanta is still trailing 7-0 in this game, but they just got the big play that they need to get back in the game after getting pushed around early on. And this is a team that had been dominating every opponent, so finally they had a really tough matchup. So they line up for the PAT. Anthony Flanagan, the star quarterback, the star basketball player, he was also the team's kicker. And so he goes back there to kick the potential game time PAT. It's a botched snap. The ball hits the ground. Flanagan, the kicker, just immediately runs into the end zone. The snapper picks it up, tosses it to him. Now Southwest is up 8-7. So they went from losing for the majority of the first half, trying to tie it back up, stop the bleeding in a sense, to having a botched play turn into a 1-point lead. And he said that's when they realized, okay, now's the opportunity. He said America's completely changed their game plan. They tried to pass to get back into the ball game. Southwest intercepted them on the next drive. That set up another Flanagan touchdown, and then once they had the 14-7 lead, because I think they missed the 2-point conversion the next time, once they had that 14-7 lead, then Americus had to double down and try to pass its way back into the game, and they intercepted it again. And from that moment, it was over. So they turned a potential disaster play where they could have been trailing 7-6 through sheer luck, fate, heads up awareness by Flanagan and the holder. They turned it a play that would have put them down by 1, up by 1. It changed the momentum of the game, and they won the state title. And that's what stood out. So I'm excited to be there with them for the Class 7A finals, to be in that ceremony and to honor a team that still 50 years later is talking about how epic that championship felt. So we'll have that up, and we'll be back tomorrow with Keeping It Real with Najee Wilkins. Thank you, and we'll see you then.
What you doing?
Hey, just finishing this claim to get Dave back on the road.
Nice. I wonder what Dave's doing.
You do your thing. We've got you covered.
Dang, where you get this car?
You need to join the union.
The union?
Absolutely. You can get 10 of these.
Union construction workers earn the highest wages with the best benefits and the most protection in the construction industry. Find your career in construction. Go to GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com and start your future today.